I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. It's Friday, December 12th, 2025. Fridays, it's the Healing Circle. So I'm pleased, as always, to present our chief leader, collaborator, thinker, organizer, planner in this Healing Circle space, Dr. BraVada Garrett-Akinsanya, Dr. B, we call her. Dr. B, how you doing? Welcome. Good to see you again.
I'm glad to be here in the Healing Circle again, and especially around this very, very important topic of dementia that impacts so many of us. So I'm just pleased to what do they call it? Tickle pink to be able to be able to be on the show with you again today. So
well, let's do the protocol that we normally do. We miss it when you're not here. And it's always settling and centering to have you guide us.
Well, thank you. I'll be happy to do that. And I do like the idea that we do start the show normally with an African libation where we acknowledge where we come from, where we notice where we are. So I'm going to just ask everybody to stop for a moment and just take a nice deep breath. And notice around you to your right, notice your safety. Continue to breathe and notice to your left, your safety. And look behind you, feeling safe. Noticing your chair that you're in and that it holds your body securely. And now that you're in this space, this safe space we claim, we begin to just breathe in and breathe out, acknowledging that we're in a space of healing. And in this space of healing, in this circle, there is no beginning, no end, no top, no bottom. Everybody in the circle has equal power and access to the space, which is the center of the circle. And as we prepare to go through this process today, I want us each to just acknowledge the elders on whose shoulders we stand and be grateful for the support that they have given us, because all of us sit here as the embodiments of hopes and dreams of thousands of people in thousands of generations. So as we sit here acknowledging our elders, we also look into the circle to acknowledge our ancestors, for they are the shoulders that the elders stood on. And as we acknowledge our ancestors, we know that they are really precious to us because they are closest to the Creator. So in this circle, no beginning, no end, no top or bottom, our African ways are called upon in conversation. And in this conversation, we have a virtual talking stick because we're not in the same space physically. So we have a virtual talking stick that is passed from one speaker to the next. And if you're the speaker and the spirit moves and you need the stick, all you have to do is ask for it and it will be given to you. So as we are driven by the moment, by the sacred breath of our ancestors, and the sacred hope of our babies, we begin to open this circle today in the Healing Circle as we talk about dementia, signs, symptoms, impact as a stage and a process toward healing. So with that, I give you the talking stick. Bye-bye, Al, as we begin this conversation.
Well, thank you. Let's bring our other partners in for this conversation. Dr. Lolita King is here and Shadlin Bourne is here. Get to see you both. And our special guest today, Nassise Geleta. She is here. Thank you all for being here. And actually, I wanted to pass the talking stick back to you, Dr. B, so that you could sort of set the discussion, why we're concerned and what we're doing at African American Child Wellness Institute and in community in the profession to address, elevate, and to support people who need to learn about dementia, Alzheimer's, and other things to challenge us. So I'm going to pass the talking stick back to you, but welcoming our other guests, and thank you all for being here, for what you do, your leadership, your service. and the knowledge that you're creating in our community. Dr.
Thank
B.
Thank you. This is very important conversation. And for this very important conversation, because we know that in African and Black communities, they're unwritten about what we should do as children as our elders become more and more impacted by things like this dementia. Our role is in caring for them. And so all this time we are pressured from one idea, which is to stay at home and keep them and care for them and seeks professional support where others may be able to step in and help. So in this space today, I believe that Sister, is it Gelete or Gelete? I want to say it right.
It's Geleta.
Geleta. Sister Geleta will be teaching us about some of the issues in terms of seeing it, recognizing it, what's the difference between quote unquote getting old and having some form of dementia where our processes are changing. And here we have Dr. King, who is going to also help us talk a little bit about the narratives that we choose in talking about with our elders and with our brothers and sisters and community. And Shadlin Bourne is going to talk to us somewhat about how to seek resources, how to be a community, and the African values that we bring into the healing space and how they can be assets for us. So with that, I'd like to begin by passing the talking stick to our illustrious guest sister, Miss Geleta. Here you go. You got the stick.
Yes. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nassise. I lead the community engagement efforts at the Minnesota North Dakota chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And ultimately, our goal is to raise awareness about Alzheimer's, connect people to resources. And then, of course, we also work to accelerate global research and advocate for folks that are experiencing dementia, both at the state and federal level. A big part of my role is partnering with community organizations like the African American Child Wellness Institute and others to, again, spread awareness, but also just make sure that people are checking in with themselves, checking in with their elders and their loved ones, and that, they have the support that they need should they be impacted. So a lot of the times I get a question around, what is Alzheimer's? What is dementia? What's the difference? And one of the biggest takeaways is, one, I want folks to know that memory loss is not a normal part of aging. And in general, when we're referring to dementia, dementia is an umbrella term. So similar to heart disease or cancer, it covers a wide range of conditions and symptoms that can impact our memory, our thinking, our reasoning abilities. It can also sometimes impact our personality and our ability to communicate. And so these changes, as they progress, can become severe enough to impact our day-to-day life. And oftentimes, our communities don't recognize the signs and symptoms until it's much too late. And right now, we're in this era of treatment where we have, therapies and drugs that can not only help with symptoms, but slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease specifically. So it's very important that we're all equipped with the information and the tools necessary. And I can talk about that a little bit later too.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to ask if we can pass the talking stick to Dr. King to see if she has any input or statements around where she sees the value of this information and what ways that we can play a role in addressing it. So, Dr. King, I'm passing the talking stick to you. And soon I will have to leave the circles early, but I've definitely got to hear from Dr. King and Ms. Shadlin Bourne before I get out of here. So here's the talking stick, Dr. King.
Thank you, Dr. B. So if we are to look at the spaces where this knowledge can be broadened and utilized, I would say, obviously, as therapists, we work with individuals who may be suffering with some type of dementia, particularly with African American Child Wellness Institute. We'd like to say that we see clients from 0 to 100. And so, obviously, along the developmental lifespan, there will be changes that people go through. But as Ms. Geleta has just said, that memory loss is not a necessary part of the aging process. We do know that if we're looking at our community, and in particular African American community, research has shown over and over and over again that we have the highest prevalence or highest rate of dementia-related illnesses, and so we have to be we have to be diligent and intentional about looking at what are those things that correlate with our prevalence rate and what is further impacting the life of our seniors in particular. So I think that if we're going to make a big impact, it's gonna come from not only our therapists who work with individuals or families, but it's also going to have to come from our medical community as well, our primary care physicians, and all those other specialists. And it also is going to take us allowing and promoting that family members be part of the treatment process, whether it be in therapy or whether it be when our loved ones are going to the doctor for an annual visit, because sometimes there might be blind spots that a person may have, or they may not be versed in how to advocate for themselves and to write down the things that are troubling them. So if we can get our community to be more engaged, not only ourselves, but one another and our families and community, I think that it'll have a huge impact on us being able to slow the progression, increase awareness, and then start to dismantle all the things that are correlates to our higher incidence of dementia or memory-related disorders.
You're muted, Dr. B.
I was saying, thank you, Dr. King. I'd like to take the talking stick and just pass it to Ms. Shadlin Bourne. And the question I think that I'd like to kind of pose to her, that's piggybacking on what you were saying, is particularly how do you see the impact of dementia-related disorders among African-born people who are here in the States, and what have you seen in terms of resources that can be used with that group? And then after that, we'll go back to the circle. Go ahead, sister.
Yeah, we have a lot of that in our community. I'm a Liberian, originally from Liberia, and we have a lot of dementia Alzheimer in our community, in the African community. There's a lot of stigma to it. There's a lot of hesitation for people to go to therapy because of the shame. So when families come to therapy and they talk about their grandmothers or their mothers or their aunts, is a lot of shame attached to it. But one of the biggest things that ACWI is working on right now is this new dementia grant. We're reaching out to the churches, especially the churches in the Black and Brown community, like our Liberian churches, Nigerian churches, different nationalities, to make sure they get educated about, they get aware about what's happening. It's not anything to be ashamed about, because if a parent is sick, the whole family suffers. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to work hard to see if we can get this together to educate our folks, Black and Brown folks.
Very good. Thank you, sister. And so that leads us to talk a little bit about one of our programs, and then I'll get off. But one of our programs that we do and we'll be doing throughout the next year or two is called the Wings in a Prayer program. And that's where we partner with churches, and the pastors come after church and pray for folks. And the wings are the chicken wings that the people come and they get free chicken wings, get prayer, and they also get screened for cognitive status. So that's the way we're setting it up, making it fun, making it spiritual, making it normalized. So in our group at the African American Child Wellness Institute, we're just trying to make sure we go in community and make it easier for people to hear about it, to talk about it, and to intervene. So with that, I know I got to go, but I had to have that one round of this awesome conversation, and I will pass the talking stick now to Ms. Geleta. Here you go, sister.
Thank you, Dr. B.
See you guys later. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Well, I think it's already kind of been touched on quite a bit. There's a lot of stigma around memory loss, and there's a lot of stigma around losing our independence and losing who we are. And so I'm grateful for ACWI and other community-based organizations that are normalizing conversations about aging, that are normalizing conversations around different conditions that impact us as we grow older. Where would you like this conversation to go?
Well, I have a question, and that is, I think Dr. King brought it up, but you go further. All three of you have actually, but you mentioned, Dr. King, the highest rate of experience of dementia is in Black people, and I wasn't sure if you meant African Americans or if this is a global phenomenon. Does it impact African people throughout the diaspora and at home in continental Africa as well? And if the prevalence is there as we think it is, what do we attribute it to? Does it have to do with diet, with conception of the world, or access to therapy, to treatment? What are the elements that go into making this experience as expansive as it is in the Black community, among Black people? So, and would all three of you respond to that? So, Dr. King, you can go first, and then Sister Geleta.
Okay, so one of the when I was speaking of the research that I have been looking at, I was looking at the U.S. in particular and African Americans, but so I can't. I don't want to speak to the larger picture of African born because they weren't part of those research samples that I've been looking at. But I can only say that we probably see similar rates or disparities between our Black or African American population versus white in other similar diseases like Ms. Geleta mentioned, heart disease. So we already have a higher rate of disease, and we can look at how does poverty, lack of access to good medical care, the stigmas and fears that our culture has had around trusting doctors, and the stigmas around mental health. We could take a look at all of those factors, and I would say we wouldn't be wrong to point at any one of them or all of them to say that I would probably believe that those are the things that probably make the biggest difference. But we do have to also look at diet. We have to look at lifestyle choices and the foods we have access to. I also found just recently AARP has put out a couple of little blurbs, and it was really interesting. I haven't gotten a chance to dig into it, but it talked about how high blood sugar is the number one preventable cause of dementia in America, and hearing loss as number 2, and low education as number 3. So it makes sense. And if we just take those 3 factors and not knowing anything else, and I haven't again been able to dig into this in terms of the research that they have behind this, but we know that the African American population has an extremely high rate of persons that have diabetes or dysregulated sugar levels, and that's very dangerous for a lot of different reasons, and it impacts a lot of different parts of the body. So if we start to take a look at the correlates of other dysfunctions in the body, it makes sense. because we have the most poor resources and the worst outcomes when it comes to preventing things that happen in our community.
Nassise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the statistic around African Americans being 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's is US based. And I think Dr. King hit a lot of those disparities and what contributes to that on the head. So we know that there are higher instances of cardiovascular health conditions, chronic conditions in Black and Brown communities. And then we also know which are risk factors for Alzheimer's and dementia. And then we also know that there are barriers to accessing quality care, getting early diagnosis. The second half of that stat is, although we are 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's, we're also less likely to receive a diagnosis, to utilize any outside support or help, and we're less likely to be recruited into clinical trials. But I suppose the silver lining of it all, the Alzheimer's Association convenes the Alzheimer's Association International Conference annually. And as part of that conference, they have satellite conferences that happen throughout the year. And so there was one in Cape Town in 2024. We see more and more studies emerging from the African continent and globally. So I look forward to reading more and diving into the data on that. The other thing I wanted to call out is women are also more likely to develop Alzheimer's. So there's over 7 million Americans living with the disease, and we know that about 2/3 of those Americans are women. And so when we look at
Is there a sense of why that anomaly exists?
So we know women tend to live longer, but more research is needed to better understand why those differences exist between men and women. But yeah, when we consider not only race, but gender, the impact is large.
But then again, our families should not take that to mean that men are less likely or shielded from it, because I guess, to personal, as I mentioned before, Dr. King had diagnosed history of family members, men and women, with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I think my mom was suffering from dementia before she died, but at 92 years old. No, 98 years old, 98. She lived a long life, but dementia, Alzheimer's at the end of it. Her sister's the same way, and then some of my cousins who are male, the same. So I know it's in both sides of our family. And I think it's cool always to give the baseline definition of the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. We did it before. It was worth doing again. Nassise, would you talk about the difference, the distinction, how we can capture these things in our mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, dementia is the umbrella term, similar to cancer, similar to heart disease. There are many different types of dementia. And generally, when we use that word, we're referring to any condition or a collection of symptoms that impact our memory, our personality, behavior, our ability to problem solve. And Alzheimer's is the leading cause of dementia. So we know that there's around 60 to 80% of all dementia cases are due to Alzheimer's. But there are other types. So there's vascular dementia, which results from blockages in our brain or tiny strokes, if you will. We also know there's Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, many different types. And I think also important to note here is there are conditions like vitamin deficiencies or thyroid conditions, or even UTIs as we get older can mimic dementia-like symptoms. So I always tell folks, just because we're experiencing symptoms doesn't mean it is dementia, but it's always good to go to the doctor and get it checked out, because if it is a vitamin deficiency or a thyroid condition, oftentimes that's treatable and reversible. And if it is dementia, then the sooner we know, the sooner we can get access to treatments and support services and so on and so forth.
And you mentioned the international aspect of this. Talk more about that. Give more information about what the association does, who it is, and how people are impacted by its work, and what our communities can do to use the resource for our personal and family and cultural benefit. But talk about the international scope as well, because I think it's a big question. Our communities are seeing ourselves as more international, as we are here today, and I think we should elevate that conversation so we see the connections that we have in health and culture and in healing globally. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I shared, we convened the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, which is a collection of researchers globally that come together and talk all things dementia. And then as part of our kind of scientific arm is also those satellite conferences that happen and convene in different parts of the world. One of the cool things about AAIC is that there is a community track. And so, if you're a researcher, a scientist, a professional in the field, we always love for folks to come out and convene in person. But every year we have what's called AAIC for All. So whether you are a community-based, like community health worker, or just someone interested in learning more about kind of the global research, you can register. It's free to attend, and that community track walks you through all of kind of the pertinent things that's good to know. And one of the exciting things that came out of AAIC this past season is the US pointer study, the results from it anyways. And we can talk a little bit more about the healthy habits and how we can reduce our risk. But the reason US pointer was particularly exciting is it shows that lifestyle interventions like healthy eating, getting enough sleep, can actually not only slow down or reduce our risk, but participants, I believe, showed a cognitive age that was 2 years younger as a result of participating in these interventions. So that was super exciting to hear.
Shannon, jump in, and Dr. King, jump.
Okay. I just wanted to answer the question about risk factor you guys earlier talked about. One of the things I found out and I read, I think Dr. King and Ms. Geleta added that about delayed or misdiagnosis in the African American community. There's a lot of that I see, and I read that many African Americans are diagnosed 2 to 3 years later. You can imagine Africans with the stigma. We're afraid to go to doctors, right? So there's a lot of reasons because of mistrust of medical system. We don't trust other people. We don't trust other people treating, and maybe lack of culturally competent care for our Black and brown people. So by the time we found out about Alzheimer is very late. Just thought to add that.
So what are some of the things people should watch out for, Nassise? How does an Al McFarlane, for example, pay attention to what I know or don't know about my family history? And I'd say I'll cast myself as Mr. Ordinary, right? Who doesn't have specific knowledge, but who has a feeling or hunches every now and then. I have fears. I since I know that my mom and my relatives before me have experienced it, how does a person like me, sort of be planful? And what should I be watching for? And what kinds of things can I do because I want to be around for a long time and be around in a healthy way as well. What should I be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of signs and symptoms, the association has developed kind of 10 warning signs for Alzheimer's or dementia. It's not meant to be a diagnostic tool or one that we should rely on kind of in a vacuum, but it's something that we can use to check in on ourselves, check in on our loved ones. And these 10 signs are as follows. First is memory loss that disrupts daily life, challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks, whether it's at work or at leisure, confusion of time or place. So, finding yourself somewhere and being unsure how you got there, or having a really hard time keeping track of dates, for instance. Trouble understanding visual or spatial relationships and images. So someone who might be struggling with dementia, they might notice that there's dings on their car more often than not, or maybe they're bumping into stuff in their home. New problems with words or speaking can also be a sign of Alzheimer's. Misplacing things and losing our ability to retrace the steps. So all of us lose things every once in a while, and that in and of itself isn't concern. But if we're losing our keys and we can't kind of retrace, if I lose my keys, I'm able to say, oh, well, I came in and I went upstairs and I went to my bedroom and I took my jewelry off and I must have left my keys there. And so I kind of retrace my steps and go to the bedroom. Someone who may be showing signs of dementia may lose their keys and look in the fridge, or perhaps they lose their keys and they're looking in the mailbox. So the key thing here is, losing our ability to retrace and get back to the item that we lost. Decreased or poor judgment is one. We know people who are experiencing Alzheimer's or dementia, they may be more vulnerable or, fall to scams more often. Or perhaps they are, every person that calls and asks for a donation, they're giving it out. And then withdrawal from work or social activities, especially as the disease progresses, it becomes harder to follow along in conversation or to kind of keep up with your day-to-day tasks. And then last but certainly not least, any unexplained changes in mood or personality. So you don't necessarily have to be experiencing all of these symptoms for it to be, time to check in with family or especially your doctor, your primary care provider. But you also could experience just one of these symptoms. And if it's out of your ordinary, that's what kind of the rule of thumb is. Anything that's outside of your ordinary, I think, is a sign to have a conversation.
Marnie Kerfman, thank you for listening and watching. And she posted another question here. Could the guest please talk about paranoia associated with dementia? What do you think?
Yeah, it could certainly be a sign or perhaps like a symptom of dementia, especially as the disease progresses and less of our surroundings and less of the people that we interact with are feeling familiar. It could certainly lead to paranoia.
I was smiling as you were talking because just to my right, I'm not going to turn my camera, but I'm in my kitchen by my back door, and there's a sign on the window that says phone, wallet, keys, stove off, lights off, right? So I have this reminder that my wife put on the board just to keep me thinking about, because I lose my keys all the time. And so that's one thing that my goal is to not be embarrassed by it and to use the reminder properly to make sure I have my keys. Too many times I've been without them. So again, but it's back to how do we recognize the potential for things to develop that will debilitate our capacity to function, and then how do we plan fully, make sure that we can be as little a burden on others as possible, and also prevent the most aggressive and most rapid deterioration of our capabilities. Shavlin, what do you think? To unmute too, unmute if you. You're still muted, Shavlin, or Dr. King. You can jump in either one. Here we go.
Sure. Like we were saying before, early detection leads to better outcomes, because if you have Alzheimer's in particular, there are medications that can slow down the progression of the deterioration. Now, it doesn't cure it, but it does lead to better quality of life for longer. Also, if there is some depression related to loss of your independence, all of those things that kind of wrap up into your mental health, and we can couple that medication with some antidepressant medication. And then there's also the fact that if a person's personality changes, sometimes that agitation, it'll take that agitation away from the person, because some forms of dementia, the person, their personality changes, as Ms. Geleta, I like saying your name, it's so pretty, mentioned, the change in personality and the ability to problem solve. So there's frustration. You might see aggression where you might not have seen it before. Being uncooperative and all of those different things. But if we are screened earlier, and we can put in place medications that are effective, then we can slow down that progression, and reduce the acuity of those symptoms.
And if I could just add, the changes that take place in your brain when it comes to Alzheimer's, they're taking place 10, sometimes 20 years before you ever notice symptoms. And so then risk reduction becomes even more important, because if you're going to the doctor regularly and you're establishing a baseline, and once you reach a certain age, they start administering those many cognitive assessments. When you notice those signs, or if a family member notices those signs and you go in, you have a higher likelihood of catching it early and benefiting from those drugs that can slow down the progression of Alzheimer's. So,
Shadlin says she's got to leave in a couple of minutes, but Shadlin, before you leave, did you have any final words or comments that you wanted to add? Go ahead. Your sound was on for a second. You clicked it off again. I think we're having problems with her audio with logging on. So let's just continue the conversation. And if you're listening on either YouTube or Facebook or X, any of the systems, we'd love to have you involved in the conversation as well. You can drop a note in. Shadlin, can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to get to
sorry.
you shortly, but I wanted you to give some thoughts if you wanted to share some things that are high level for you.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've been having audio problems, but I just want to encourage listeners to have early access to support and resources. Early stage patient and caregiver can join support group, educational program, access care coordination. The earlier you do it, the better it is to combat that Alzheimer or dementia. Thank you. I'm sorry, I have to run.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Have a great day. So Dr. King and Nassise, what about therapy? What does therapy do for people that either are experiencing dementia, Alzheimer's? Is that one of the resources and tools that can help people through? And I raised the question because there still is this broad resistance to the notion of mental health and mental health providers interacting with us. We haven't fully embraced all the knowledge and skills and capabilities that the profession and our people in the profession can and do deliver to our community. How do we recognize the value of therapy, promote the value of therapy, and move to destigmatize this idea of going to professionals for getting and maintaining, improving our overall quality of life with, and dealing with things specifically like dementia in the process. Dr. King, what do you think? And Nassise,
Sure.
jump into.
Yeah, so it absolutely can help, because one of the things that in working with some persons that have lived with dementia or Alzheimer's, it starts to be very isolating, and then a lot of times it's one of those things that even if they notice differences, they may not want to admit that to family, because they don't want to be perceived as different, or that there's something wrong. And so there's a great loneliness to that. I had one seasoned person, and one of the things that she talked about was just not being interested in anything anymore. She had a great group of friends up through retirement. And then when she noticed that her memory was starting to slip a little bit, she started to make her world just that much more smaller, because she felt like she couldn't keep up with the conversations. She just wasn't interested in much of anything anymore. So she really didn't have much to conversations. So it can be very isolating and lonely. And also, in therapy, we can strategize. How do, like, just like you, Mr. McFarlane, mentioned that you have those notes up. We can help a person who is concerned about memory loss to develop personalized strategies to help them remember and recall the things that need to be done, like make you turn off the stove, or when you get up in the morning, take your medications. We can help them develop these strategies and schedules to help manage the loss or the deficits that may be coming up. Also, we can help the family members. On the flip side of that, I've worked with family members who are um, uh, housing or just the caretaker of a loved one. And it can be so frustrating. And some of them come in and they feel so guilty about how angry they feel, or, are impatient they feel when they don't get the cooperation, or that the person's personality has changed, or they're not being very agreeable, and or they're, lashing out in anger. And so that helps that person kind of decompress, find better ways of coping, because it can make that person feel like a horrible person, because these emotions erupt that they didn't even know they had, or resentment that, I'm the only one, and they have siblings or whatever, other family members not um, um, coping as much as they are. So it just helps the whole family, all the way around, to have a space where they can feel heard, a culturally competent space where people understand not just the disease, but the nuances and how it shows up in our culture, and all the things that they want to retain and celebrate about our culture as they deal with something such as dementia.
Well, the reason I raised the question, Nassise, about the international aspect, or the global aspect of African people is, and I could be too myopic, forgive me if this is the case, in trying to find a reason and a cause for all of our problems outside of us. And what I mean by that is that how much of what we do anywhere on the planet is impacted by the experience of meeting and being dominated by European culture, cultures that demeaned and devalued our lives, our property, our history. So a person could say, Al, you're just talking crazy because you're not dealing with the fact of the need for individual personal accountability, that people who do things that are stupid or sick or crazy, it's their fault, it's not the culture. And I don't know that I believe that. I believe there's something that's connected, that's bigger, and that our healing ultimately will find us seeking a way of knowing and being that is organic, that reflects our sense of creation, our sense of origin, and that reflects something beautiful as our destiny as human beings. And so to the degree that we cannot find and live in that peace, then we are driven by the trauma. And the trauma may not be personal because it's collective, and it's impacting the entire population of our people in the world. And so am I being simplistic or too idealistic? Am I wrong even raising these kinds of questions? I don't know. Nassise, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, certainly some good things to ponder on. I know in 2022, for instance, there were a couple of studies that linked the impact of racism on our overall health, and especially as it relates to cognitive decline. So I don't think you're too far off. We know that folks on the continent also experience dementia, and I'm not as well versed as what it on the continent, what it looks like, or how folks are managing. I know in these studies, though, that certainly racism and our experience with it, both interpersonally and institutionally, contribute to a negative impact on our cognitive health. So there's definitely something to it.
Well, we also have to remember that trauma it lives on through generations. It actually changes the structure of the brain
Mhm.
and the cells in the body. So if a person is um, untreated for trauma or stressors that have been long standing, um, that makes us all vulnerable. Because we don't reset. Sleep is supposed to be restorative, and if we're looking at a person who has unresolved trauma, then one of the things that they more than likely will report in terms of symptomology is insomnia, not being able to sleep. And obviously, that's not the only disorder, but we also can look at depression and its impact on sleep. So we have to, I don't think you're far off at all to say, how you've been treated and how your parents were treated and how um, it, the grandparents and so on were treated, how it has changed the structures of our cells in and of itself. And does that mean that we're damaged and in disrepair completely? No, but it does mean that if those social ills impacted us in negative ways, then how can we reverse that as
Mhm.
a people and as a community to get systems back in order? Get our biology, our psychology back in order and back in uh, homeostasis.
Okay, so and so that says that there's a sense that as individuals can heal, the culture can heal, the population at large can heal, and what would that look like? What if Nassise, there was not the experience because we lived more healthily and we ate properly and we exercised uh, and that I think you said at the very beginning that dementia and Alzheimer's are not inevitable and not unavoidable part of the process of aging. So if it's avoidable, how would it look if we were able to live in ways that avoided the consequence and the impact of dementia and Alzheimer's?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of, how can we ensure that Alzheimer's isn't inevitable for us? There's a few things we can do. We can challenge our mind, and we can stay socially connected. We can also move our bodies so that every day we're able to ensure that, we're working on our mobility, we're working on our stamina. And in general, what we say is anything that's good for your heart is good for your brain, and vice versa. And so doing things like controlling our blood pressure, managing other chronic conditions, ensuring that we are getting enough sleep so that our brain has time to process and clear some of that stuff out, managing our diabetes, eating right, maintaining a healthy weight, all of those things, if we had the time and the space and the capacity, those are small changes that we can make to, I think, better impact our lives. And then also sharing those tips out, not just learning and keeping it within us, but also making sure that friends, family, the folks that we're seeing out in community at church, they have the tools as well.
And so, Dr. King, you mentioned this earlier, but what are some of the strategies of African American Child Wellness Institute to bring awareness and healing and prevention into our community?
Sure. Well, we've been utilizing this wonderful platform that you've allowed us to come on for several weeks now to increase awareness of dementia. We also, as Dr. B mentioned earlier on the show, have identified 12 churches so far, but not only churches, there will be some mosques and there will be some other churches of the African-born communities that we will visit and provide them with psychoeducation, with resources, and with a 5 cog assessment. So we won't be diagnosing, but we will say, well, based on this 5 minute assessment here, and it's culturally based, uh, it looks like you might want to have further testing. We also will be providing information and support to the caregivers because, again, we know that one person um, isn't if we're treating that one person, we're ignoring the fact that they come with family, hopefully family, and if they don't have family, how do we connect them to community so that we can ensure that someone is taking care of them and getting and advocating for them. So those are some of the larger things that we are planning to do. We'll also have some articles just to kind of print, put out in our community. I think that the more information that we get into the hands of our people, then it definitely creates pathways for there to be those more sustainable steps of how do we not only screen for that, but then how do we continue to stay on track for health, good healthy habits, such as what Ms. Geleta has mentioned. So if we can do all of those things and we just kind of tie them together and we say, this is all part of our wellness. This is what we deserve. This is what we need to pay attention to. And that's our right. And we move that forward. I think that the not only our generations, but those to come will be better off. And then we can try to change the tide in all areas of health where we see a big disparity between African and Black and Brown and the white majority.
Nassise, I often ask our guests to sort of tell their personal story, how you come to the work that you're doing and whose shoulders you stand on as a member of our community. Take us, if you would, introduce yourself personally, if you're willing to do that, and talk about the genealogy that brings you to the person who's operating in the world of healing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I guess in terms of whose shoulders do I stand on? Certainly, in our conversation and how we opened up on the shoulders of my elders and my ancestors, I had a lot of support along the way, a village, if you will, that has gotten me to where I'm at. And what brings me to the work is just my own experiences as a Black woman, as someone who's seen, the impact of not having access to information or access to support services that would have made mine and my family's journey a lot easier. And so my charge and the thought process was, if we all have equal and equitable access to information that can contribute to our health and wellness in all domains of that, then the better we're all off for it. So that's kind of what I look at. And that's part of what brought me to the association and learning about the disparities and knowing that there is a lot that can be done on a personal level, but also on an institutional level to support people with Alzheimer's and dementia. I wanted to join the cause and serve this mission. So I'm happy to be here with y'all.
Mm-hmm. Where's your family from? Where are you from? Where do you originate?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Okay. And if you look at were you born here or born there?
I was born there.
Born there. The question of mental health and Alzheimer's in particular, from your, say, family histories, experience. I've shared mine a little bit. I know that I've got, things that frighten me in my family. And so it makes me pay attention and look for, ways, strategies to avoid, hopefully what hope is not inevitable. How about in your lineage, your family, and as you discuss Ethiopian community and our people here, what comes to mind?
Yeah. So, when I initially joined the association, I didn't think I had a personal connection to Alzheimer's and dementia. I knew what the disparities were, and I wanted to do what I can. I wanted to do my part. But again, thinking about access to information and sharing the signs and the symptoms and what I'm learning as I get acclimated to my role, my parents would say, oh, so-and-so used to do that. So-and-so they would tell me stories. And I'm like, well, did you know that, this was Alzheimer's or this was dementia? And oftentimes the answer was no, we didn't. We just thought, they're just getting old, or, maybe they are crazy, or perhaps it's, some other thing. And so I certainly have seen how stigma, I suppose, prevents folks from getting the help and the support that they need. But I also think Ethiopian culture is very communal. And so for those that were back home when this was happening, I think they benefited from that village mentality of people checking in and not being isolated and having the support that they need. And certainly that's something that we need to combat here, is isolation and stigma, and ensuring that, if we feel sick and we have a cold, we go to the doctor and we get help. If our heart is hurt, or any other part of our body is hurt, we seek help for it. And so mental health, or Alzheimer's, dementia, and other related conditions, it's all the same. And I think that's my biggest message to all communities.
So Dr. King, from our experience as Africans in America, African Americans, how do you think we have, how do you see us emerging from disinformation and towards better living, because we have knowledge now? Whose shoulders do you stand on in the work that you do as well?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I stand on the shoulders of my immediate family, of my grandparents, of Black teachers who were kind of like those unicorns, but they, in the sense that you didn't see a lot of Black teachers when I was growing up. But when I did, those were the ones that really took the time to tell you how special you were, and to give you hope and say you can do it. And so that in and of itself, having people around you that can help you learn and help you to navigate different systems has been so important. And I think that we all have the obligation to do that. It's not enough, in my opinion, to become educated, become aware, to get healthy, and then it's only me that's doing that or that's benefiting from that. That's not what our people were put on this earth for, and it certainly has not. We wouldn't be here had that been the mentality of our ancestors. So I truly think that we have an obligation to leave spaces and places better than what we found them, and and the knowledge is power. That's one thing that people can never take away from you. When you learn something and you have that knowledge, they can't take it, but you should be willing to give it away. You should be willing to give it away if it helps someone else. And so, as we look at the elements such as dementia or Alzheimer's, one of the things that I want people to take away also is that it can be scary, but it would be less scary if you found out as much as you possibly could about it, right? because most of the time when we are most fearful, it's because of the unknown.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that it won't be difficult, but if you equip yourself with knowledge and then you operationalize that, wow, and then you incorporate community in that, and then it gets larger and larger. I don't think that there's anything or nothing that we can't overcome as a people.
Well, we're out of time. Great conversation. Thank you so much, Nassise Geleta. I think I said it right, Geleta. I said it the right way. And thank you for your work at the Alzheimer's Association. And Dr. King, thank you for your work at the ACWI, African American Child Wellness Institute. I'm Alan McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.